Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to start this morning with a story. And let's make sure I find the right page. A story from our book of the month, of course, which is appropriate. Before I do that, lightning strikes. So Reverend Joe walked in this morning and she's like, "Well, did you figure out when lightning struck for you?" Lightning strikes refers to when we kind of realize, and we're going to talk about this a lot today, kind of when you realize that you're getting older. And for me, it kind of happened when I turned 25. Turned 25, and it was like, I went, this is not quite where I expected to be. And I turned 25. Understand, when I was 25 years old, I was just starting ministerial school. And that summer, when I turned 25, I was working at a summer camp on the south end of Vashon Island, just near Seattle. And I was working for Campfire. And it was the last summer I worked as a camp counselor. And I worked with every age group possible that year, from kindergarten all the way through high school age, which is counselors in training. So it's kind of like my last hurrah in that world. And so it's kind of like saying goodbye. And hello. And we're going to talk about that later as we go along today, because it is very much, this whole process I've discovered is very much about saying goodbye and hello at the same time. So the author of the book, Lewis Richmond, went about the process of interviewing a bunch of people as he wrote this book. And one of the first people he writes about in here is a lady named Sarah. And he asked Sarah, "What's it like to be a 105?" And for a moment, her mouth tightened in irritation. But then she relented. "Young man," she said, and I could just hear her saying that, "look around. Look at all these." She waved her hand at the weavings that surrounded her, or us. And she says, "When I look at these, I'm happy," she said. "Really, I'm happy. I lived my life and I did what I wanted. You want to know what it's like to be me? To be 105 years old? As if that mattered. I made these. That's me. I did what I wanted to do." I was embarrassed at my first question. I tried again. "What do you think is the deepest lesson you have learned in your life?" She gave me a quick, piercing glance and then looked down and said quietly, "This is my life. I have no other." And so we have no other. Even if we happen to be one of those people, one of those individuals that believes in reincarnation, other lives, parallel lives, whatever, this is the one we have. This is what I have, this moment right here. So Lewis Richmond writes in his book, "Lightning strikes is the moment we wake up to our aging and can see the full significance of it in our whole life, from its unremembered beginning to its unknown end." And he goes on to talk about, in these first few chapters of the book, the stages we go through of kind of coming to terms with this, of recognizing what it means for us to age. And I want you to understand, I'm being very precise about language. I'm not talking about getting older. I'm talking about aging. And for me, there's a difference, there's a distinction, because of the way I frame it in my mind, the way I hold on to it. For me, getting older is getting rigid. To me, getting older is beginning to die. For me, getting older is becoming so stuck and so trapped in my ways that I'm no longer seeing any options. I'm no longer seeing the variety. I'm no longer seeing choices beyond what has been. It's like I know we frequently talk about when we stop learning and growing is when we start dying. For me, that's what getting old is, and I'm owning this completely. For me, there's a distinction in the wording for me. And what I'm talking about today, and what he's talking about is aging. It's a shifting in perspective, a shifting in the way we frame the process. So he talks about steps here. He talks about lightning strikes is the first one. The second one is coming to terms. The third one is adaptation. And the fourth one is appreciation. So lightning strikes is like, holy crap, I'm getting older. Okay. This is me rewriting the author, so just bear with me a bit. The second one is coming to terms. It's like old me versus new me. And when I start looking and making those comparisons, am I happy or am I starting to fill with regret? Right. So there's this whole process we go through of kind of how am I feeling about this? What am I thinking about this? Am I looking at this process as an opportunity? Or am I looking at this and saying, oh my God, I missed out on this and the choices that I've made and all the mistakes and all the stuff? What is my relationship to this whole process? The next one is adaptation, where all of a sudden we're no longer comparing and we begin the process of being. It's like, okay, so I've made X number of trips around the sun. And I can remember for myself when that really started kicking in. It's about the time I turned 50. And all of a sudden, when I would go to exercise or go to work out, my recovery time started slowing down. It's like I was used to being able to go out and do a lot every day, and all of a sudden, the soreness lingered a little bit longer, and I noticed. And maybe my hearing, and yeah, and my hearing, some of those things. I mean, all the years of working next to loud, heavy equipment, heavy duty vacuums, and all that stuff takes its toll. A lot of hours driving with the window down next to me. You start noticing the little things. For me, it was mostly physical. And finally, we come to appreciation, where all of a sudden I just accept this is where I am, where I've been. I look at the totality of my experience up until now, and all of a sudden I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, this is where I've been, and this is where I am now. Mr. Richmond goes on in his book to say, aging is beyond our control. But how we age is up to us. How we go about it. And not just how we go, and for how we go about it, it's like, we're here, Center for Spiritual Living, Ernest Holmes, The Science of Mind. Everything begins and ends with thought. Everything begins and ends with how am I thinking about this? How am I feeling about this? What are my beliefs? What are the beliefs I'm holding on to about aging? What have I believed up until now to be true about that? So what are some of the stories we've told ourselves about aging, about getting older? I'll throw it out to you. Anybody care to share? What are some of the, when I ask the question, what do you believe to be true about aging? What comes to mind? Anybody? Go ahead, Valerie. Giving up. What's that? Giving up. Giving up. Okay.
You don't have to get old.
You don't have to get old. Bravo. Bravo. Yes.
You're only as old as you feel.
You're only as old as you feel. Okay. Good, good. See? And like I said, for me, the whole getting old thing, that was a word that had a lot of baggage for me. It had a lot of baggage. And I really took the time to look at that over the last few days. So I was sharing with Reverend Jill, I really resisted this book. I really did. And once I got into it, and once I got through the foreword and the introduction, I was like, oh, okay. Because the title had thrown me off. It really had. And I pushed through it. And it's kind of went, okay, if there's this much resistance, there's something here for me. That's kind of one of the things I measure for myself. It's like if I really, it's kind of a gut level thing. If I'm really resisting something like this, it's like there's a message, there's a lesson, there's something for me to learn. And part of it was very much saying, okay, this is an opportunity for me to really reframe this stage in my life and really check in and say, because I've kind of developed my own attitudes about it, and there have been some gifts in this for me. Absolutely. I'm not really crystal clear on all of them yet, but they're here. Sylvia Boorstein in the foreword, I think it was in the foreword, yes, wrote this about aging. I want to cultivate enough delight in sunsets and tulips and symphonies and good movies to keep me a cheerful companion for my family and friends. And I think implicit in that is to keep me a cheerful companion for me. How joyful do I want to? I mean, for me, that speaks to joy. Can I walk through the balance of this time I have on the planet? Can I walk through it with joy? Can I continue to walk in this world looking for the magic and inviting that? Can I continue to walk through this world, one, embracing the wisdom that I have accumulated up until this point, and to still be open to more? Still be open to the newness. Still be open to the opportunity to reframe the way I think and feel about life. Over the last several weeks, I've been teaching a class called The Essential Ernest Holmes. And I went back and was flipping through some of the readings and some of the writings and all of it that Ernest Holmes had to share with us over the years. And one of the things that he shared over and over again was that we were to stay open at the top, to not limit ourselves to what he decided to share and synthesize. He had gone out and studied so many writers, and and he said reading Emerson was like breathing. That's a paraphrase, not quite the right quote, but it's in that neighborhood. And he talked about how Emerson had gone out and studied Zoroastrianism and Judaism and Christianity and Buddhism and all the rest, and he had come up with his own, and the Ernest came in behind him and did the very same thing. And for him staying open at the top, his encouraging us to stay open at the top, said we are to continue to learn and grow. We are continue to embrace things and add things to our way of thinking that fit, that take us to the next place. So what is that thing for you? What is that next thing, that next idea for you, that next opportunity to learn and grow? Only you can answer that question. For me this week, it's been this book. It kind of caught me right between the eyes and said, okay, dude, made 62 trips around the sun. What's next for you? I'm like, okay. And I'm sure many of us in the room can attest to this. I mean, at 62 trips around the sun, in my head, I'm still 25 or 30, in that neighborhood somewhere. But with all the wisdom accumulated between then and now. And so what's next for me? And one of the things that's next, as Lewis Richmond writes in his book, is elderhood. It's a nice little word, elderhood. And for him, elderhood is about deciding, what is it I have to share? Given my accumulated experience and knowledge, what is it I have to share with those who come behind me? We talk about this from time to time, right? Being out here on the spiritual path. It's like part of being on the path is, yes, we're way showers. Part of being on the path is, yes, we get to kind of have our own growth experience. And what we have come to understand at being on the path is that part of that learning and growing is sharing what we have learned with those who are coming up behind us on the path. It's like I have both eyes heading forward, both eyes on the journey ahead of me, but I also have a hand reaching back behind me saying, here, I can't do it for you, but I can offer some assistance. I can share a little bit of wisdom that I've gleaned along the way. Maybe ask you a question to help you discover for yourself what your answers are. Maybe hand you a fish today, but the next day I'm going to teach you how to do it for yourself. The elders, and this is something I think we're coming back to in our society, in our ways of being these days, is to stop and consider the wisdom that our elders have to share. Because back in the day, what the elders were, the people were the people in the community that kept the stories, the people in the community that knew the right plants to use for X, Y, and Z, right? That knew the medicinal plants, where to find them and how to care for them, how to gather them. They're the ones that taught us how to honor life and to honor each other. They're the ones that taught us about the importance of community, of being together. How much of that have we forgotten? And how much of that do we need to revive, I think, today? In a society that in many ways we've become so dispersed, and yet in many ways we're more connected than we've ever been, just in a different way. How can we allow that to evolve and emerge today? How can we leverage the knowledge that we have for our own benefit and for the benefit of others? Ernest Holmes writes this: we all seek some relationship to the universal mind, the oversoul, or the eternal spirit, which we call God. And if life reveals itself to, and life reveals itself to whoever is receptive to it. So how does that connect to everything I've been talking about so far today? It has everything to do with that. Because what this speaks to is the connection that we all share. What this speaks to is the connection that we not only have to the universal spirit, to the universal mind, the oversoul, and that's a phrase he borrowed from Emerson. This is why I like the whole elderhood concept, because it's at the level of connection, the level of universal mind, the oversoul. We remember that we're all connected. And that as we learn and grow, this universal collective in which we all exist, it's like cleaning house. We make it easier. As we clean up our own consciousness, clean up our own beliefs, as I spent the time this week going, okay, we can let go of the whole stories about old stuff. As we spend the time cleaning up our own house, cleaning up our own side of the street, so to speak, that helps everybody else. And as I become more willing to embrace my own learning, I get to share that. It gives me an opportunity to share that with others. You know, to teach the kid down the street how to mow the grass, or maybe show them an easier way to mow the grass. How many opportunities do we have as we go through the week to share just a little piece of wisdom with somebody? To show a little support, to show a little care, to make the connections. Because we live in a world that is looking for connection. And I think no matter where we are in life, there is a certain amount of elderhood that comes along with that, no matter what our age. What is the wisdom I have gained? What is the wisdom I can share at 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 with those who are coming up behind me? Because at a certain point, from a certain perspective, yes, we have this age, this number of trips we count around the sun. But aging is more than that. Aging is growing in wisdom. Aging is growing in perspective. Aging is an opportunity to reframe the way I see myself and see myself in relationship to others and relationship to the world. And in relationship to spirit is the foundation for all of that. For all of that. So, with that, I'll wrap that portion and open up to Q&A. Any questions? I know we a lot of stuff today. Oh, thank you, Nancy. Anybody questions or comments on what we've talked about? Yes, ma'am.
So I too had a problem with 25. I was like, oh my, I'm a quarter of a century old.
Oh, I don't. That one too.
Yeah. But then when I got to be 30, I realized, oh heck, I'm still young. And I know a little bit ago I went, yeah. But you know what? I am still young. And we, Carl and I, are blessed to be in a community, even though it's 55 plus. It is so active. And I look at people who are in their 80s and 90s and I go, I want to be that person when I grow up. So, yeah. So it's great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay,
Good
who
stuff.
else?
All right, Stephen.
I appreciate what you said in what's next. What do I have to offer?
Right.
And in my journey, I've realized I'm still a perfectionist. I'm still trying to get everything perfect, but I'm aware of it sometimes. And just the fact of I feel more relaxed and calm as I've got a lot of wisdom. I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life, some silly things and some things that hurt myself. But it's all about what I can share in the future, and I'm really calm about what my next adventure is.
Oh, great. Bravo. Thank you.
Danny.
Actually, everything you said was pretty on point. I probably felt the oldest I felt between the age of 25 and 30. Well, right before I turned 50, anyway. And it was the lightning strike thing because I actually was struck by lightning the year I turned 25.
Oh.
So that probably had something to do with that. But I'm also quite blessed to be alive.
Right.
But it was, because once I turned 30, I stopped paying attention. I always forget how old I was up until like just before 50. And then I remembered. I'm like, oh my God. Because my daughter just loved to remind me, oh, you're going to be this year. I was like, ah. But I had made a decision that I wasn't going to be that old crotchety, never going to change my ways because I'm this old and you're just going to have to accept me for what I am because I've seen that. And that whole you're only as old as you feel, absolutely believe that. And that's why I've spent my early 50s being active, eating better, taking better care of myself because I do want to be that grandmother on roller skates.
There you go. Oh, there we go.
Good morning. What really resonated with me, I don't mean to put my back to
You're
you,
fine.
but
You're fine.
what really resonated with me, Reverend Lee, is staying open at the top. Just stay open. And I got that. So thank you. That was
Good.
awesome.
Great. Thank you. All right. All right. Thank you, Nancy. All right. So, practicing principles. Oh, and one quick thing. So, staying young mentally, staying flexible, noticing. Part of that is noticing. And so on the way in this morning, I noticed a feather on the ground. It's like, and I always thought, for me, that's angels. Angels on my shoulder. So I picked that up and I kept it with me and I put it right here to remind me that there's angels watching over me as I'm doing this. So, all right, practicing the principles. Number one, what lesson or lessons did you or might you learn from the moment lightning strikes? So I'm going to invite you to visit and revisit that this week. And number two, the second question to consider for the week, what does being or becoming an elder mean to you? What are the gifts you have to offer those who are coming behind you or walking the path next to you? Okay, so there are your two practicing the principles for the week. So let's take this into prayer today. Take a deep breath, another deep breath with me. And let it all go. And we set aside everything that has gone before and set aside anything that's coming up later and allow ourselves to be present right here, right now, because it is in this now moment, in this awareness of the presence, we are conscious that we are moving through this life one breath at a time. One breath at a time. And so we are awake now when we recognize that there is one power and presence, the infinite spirit, life, truth, the oversoul, in which we live and move and have our being. It is everywhere present, surrounding us, uplifting us, guiding and directing us forward in this and every moment. And so right here and right now, we accept this, we celebrate it, we embrace it as the very truth, core, and center of our being. And we know it is true of each and every one of us here and listening to us and watching us online. It is true of every person, place, and thing on this planet, truly in this universe. And so we are grateful for our awareness of our growth, of our conscious and aware unfoldment, of our expanding experience of life and love and truth, of health and wholeness and prosperity. And so I invite all of you right here in the space, or those watching online later, here, now, whenever. If there is a concern in your mind or in your heart right now, simply bring it forward and let it go. Let it go in faith and trust, knowing that all is well, that life is good and very good as each and every one of us. We wholly accept and embrace our good as health, as wholeness, as prosperity, as an abundant life filled with love, knowing that every need is met, fulfilled, and exceeded in each and every moment. We know a blessing on everyone here, on anyone, anywhere, exercising their spiritual practice and awareness. Mosque, synagogue, church, gathering, wherever. Each and every one is blessed. And so we go forward into this day, into the rest of our week, knowing that all is well, that life is good and very, very good. And we are grateful for this and so much more. And we let it be so. And so it is.